Hi, and welcome to another episode of Diary of a Migration Lawyer. Today, I want to give a little bit of a snapshot about student visas and what the requirements are on one of those. So the first thing that you want to consider for a student visa is that you have a confirmation of enrollment. What does that mean? So confirmation of enrollment essentially is a document that you would get from a CRICOS registered institution to say, yes, this person is enrolled in our course, this is how much fees they've paid, and this is what the course looks like. So the course is, a Bachelor of Nursing. It's going to run for 146 weeks and it's going to cost this much money. So that is a document that is mandatory to go with your student visa application. Also, what is CRICOS? Little star here. CRICOS means Commonwealth Register of Institutions and Courses for Overseas Students. So essentially every course that is available to an overseas student is listed on the CRICOS website, which makes it a little bit easier when you're trying to find an institution and a course. The second requirement that you want to think about when you are applying for a student visa is that you want to be able to show the department that you are genuinely entering Australia for a temporary purpose, and that is to study. For all Australian visas, what you want to do is ensure that your reason for entering Australia is 100% aligned to the name of your visa. So if you're coming into Australia on a student visa, the purpose of your stay is to be a student. And the genuine temporary entrant requirement would indicate that it means that you are going to depart Australia after that. Although the things that will be considered when the case officer is deciding whether or not you are a genuine temporary entrant to Australia is your personal circumstances, so your family situation, if you work, how old you are, if you have children, all of those things, your immigration history in Australia and offshore, and whether or not you have ever overstayed or had a visa refused or anything like this. And if you have had a previous visa in Australia, any compliance with that visa. Migration policy importantly says, though, that a genuine temporary entrant, and I'm just going to read it because I think it's very interesting. A genuine temporary entrant is a student visa applicant whose circumstances support a genuine intention to enter and remain in Australia temporarily, notwithstanding the potential for this intention to change over time to an intention to remain in Australia for an extended period or permanently. So when you are applying for the student visa, essentially you must be entering Australia for the temporary purpose of studying, but it might be the case, and the department appears to understand this, is that your course may be working towards some other permanent stay in Australia. But at the time of applying for that student visa, your intention must be to only stay for a temporary purpose. The next thing that I don't know what I was doing then, I was just moving my hand for some stupid reason. Okay. Edit that out. The next requirement that you want to consider when you're applying for a student visa is that you have genuine access to funds. So what does that mean, having genuine access to funds? So essentially what you want to be able to show the department when they're assessing your application is that you have the ability to pay your school fees, you have the ability to pay for standard life necessities like food and accommodation, and you have the ability to pay for a ticket home. So having genuine access to funds can be shown in multiple different ways, but I will give a few examples. So for example, a term deposit might be held for the purposes of paying school fees. A bank account might be held in the applicant's name that has money sitting there available to the applicant to use for the purposes of their student visa. A loan might be taken out. A credit card, the person might have a scholarship. So when you are trying to evidence genuine access to funds, if someone else is supporting the application financially, what you want to be able to show is that that person supporting has access to liquid financial assets. So for example, it's not tied up in superannuation, it's not tied up in property investment, it is sitting in a bank account able to be accessed. That is one of the big important things. And I have seen applications pop up from time to time where that has been a bit of a detriment to the application, because while the person supporting was quite asset rich, the access to liquid funds was not necessarily there. The other way of showing access to funds is if the primary applicant is going to be employed, or the spouse of the primary applicant, or if the supporting person is employed and has an ongoing salary. So for example, if you are the primary applicant and you go and get a part-time job that is associated with, potentially the the occupation that you'd like to be in after you finish studying, and you have access to ongoing salary, that will be considered as part of financial support of your application. Alternatively, if you have someone supporting your application and they have ongoing employment, and with their salary they can afford to support you but also themselves, then this will also be something that will be taken into account as genuine access to funds. The next point is that as a student, you must hold overseas student health cover. So essentially all that is private health insurance for students, and that must cover the entire period of your student visa. That again is a mandatory document that gets submitted with the visa application to show that you have access to that private health insurance. So if anything happens to you medically in Australia, you are covered within the realms of whatever that insurance says. Most of the major health providers in Australia provide that, and it's quite easy to get by just giving them a call and telling them you're going to be a student in Australia and that you need that health insurance available to you. The other consideration is that you might need to provide evidence of English to be able to get into some of your courses. Really dependent on the type of course that you're going into will depend on whether or not you do need to provide English evidence. It is not necessarily a mandatory requirement of the visa. And then the other key provision always is that health and character requirements must be met for every Australian visa, and this one is no different. Then once you hold your student visa, there are a few conditions that you want to just really keep cemented in your mind. That private health insurance, that overseas student health cover that we talked about earlier, you want to make sure that that remains in force for the period of the visa. And because the purpose of you being in Australia is to be a student, what you want to do is to make sure you're studying, make sure you're meeting any academic requirements, and make sure you're passing university. In some cases, it might be okay to have failed one or two courses here and there, but certainly that's not something that you should rely on when coming to Australia to study. It is required that you continue to pass your courses and be part of the institution that you are studying at. Otherwise, you may be up for a visa refusal because you're not meeting the academic requirements or conditions attached to your visa. That's a little checklist of what's required for a student visa. So if you do need any further information, please get in touch with us at Passage Migration Consulting. In the meantime, please like, comment, subscribe, and go ahead and watch all of our other videos. Thanks for watching. Bye. Thanks for watching Diary of a Migration Lawyer. If you would like some more hints, tips, tricks on how to do migration yourself or with a strategic partner like a migration lawyer, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, Diary of Migration Lawyer.